Welcome to Mama Paul's video podcast. My name is Paul Duchesne, and today is Tuesday, May the 12th, 2020. Yesterday, on the 11th of May, we did the first in this series of shows, and we got it up on the air. And if you're into numerology on any level, May is the fifth month, and you break down, so you use the number 5, and then you break down 11 into 1 plus 1, and 2020 would be a 2 and a 2. So we add 5, 1, 1, 2, and 2, and we get the number 11, which is a very high spiritual number. Now, I don't know if that's relevant or not, but it felt like a good omen, and it was better than getting a 666, which would be the address of one of the Trump buildings, I believe, on Fifth Avenue. Interestingly, in the news today, today's show isn't going to be a lot about news, but I just can't help but mention, I'm just compulsive with news. The Supreme Court today was hearing oral arguments. They started at 10 o'clock Eastern Time, and they were hearing oral arguments about Trump's tax returns. Deutsche Bank has Trump's whole financial history in a bundle all over their bank, and everybody and their brother has been trying to get a hold of these records to show where Trump's money is coming from and where it's going. His money's coming from Russian gangsters. It's getting laundered through Deutsche Bank. It's going to offshore accounts. I mean, it's been well documented in a number of places if you read anything other than Fox News and their affiliates. So the argument they've been raising is that Trump's above the law, basically, that Trump, what he said himself. He said, I could stand in the middle of Fifth Avenue, shoot somebody, and get away with it. Well, they actually made this argument in the Congress a couple of months ago when Trump's impeachment trial was going on. That was the argument they raised. He could shoot somebody and it's okay. No, it's not. It's not. Nobody is above the law. Nobody, including you, Donald. So anyway, the arguments happened today, and I have a funny feeling he's going to lose in the Supreme Court. It's gone from every court in the country. We got like a dozen cases converging from all over the place. The Southern District of New York, the District in Virginia, the Congress, all these investigative units want to get a hold of his money because he's been lying, cheating, and stealing most of his life. He's a gangster. All right, the second story for the day is how the virus is spreading through the coronavirus is spreading through the White House. Well, it looked like they were exempt from everything over there at the White House, but suddenly we have people in isolation. We've got them wearing face masks. They're practicing or trying to practice social distancing. Well, if you work in the West Wing, it's not exactly the ideal place for social distancing. The West Wing is a lot of little cubicles, a lot of little stairways, and a lot of people crowding together. So it's not exactly an ideal place to have a bunch of space around you. So they don't have that there. So the coronavirus is spreading there. His taxes are about to be, he's going to be forced to, the bank, not him. Donald doesn't have to release anything. Deutsche Bank is going to be the ones releasing the information. And they are ready to let this information go. So that's going to be the big follow-up. I don't know when they'll actually come to the decision, but I don't think it's going to take them that long to write this one. It seems to be a slam dunk. So last night was the first show, and the first show I followed this format that I developed quite a few years ago after the Twin Towers fell on 9/11. And the format was I would open with a serious poem and then take a telephone call from George Bush or Cheney or the Dalai Lama or whoever was in the news that week. I do a one-way phone call like Bob Newhart used to do. Then I would deconstruct the news, and that would be the first half of the show. Second half of the show, I would interview a woman working on world peace who I would find in my local health food store every week. I would then steep some tea, talk about the tea. While the tea was steeping, I'd read a little poetry, drink the tea, comment about it, maybe another poem, finish the show up. That's it for the week. So it's sort of positive and negative things. The negative being the news and the positive being the world peace. The overall theme that I'm going to be working with is sort of a political economy. I was a major in political economy. I'm an amateur. I consider myself an amateur political economist, not a professional. I did not get the degree from the new school. I only did half of the program. So I am not an intellectual. I am, if anything, a pseudo-intellectual, pretentious pseudo-intellectual. I like books. I read a lot. I get a lot of I get the newspaper every day. I get 2 papers in the house every day. I probably have about 20 magazines a month that I get, and I buy books. Sometimes I buy books just to support the author. And most of the books in back of me, if you'll notice, they have papers sticking out of them because I'll carry books and notes with them and things like that. So we got the two themes that I'm going to focus on are going to be political economy on the one side and the organic Twinkie project on the other side. I'll talk about the political economy for a second now. Political economy is a branch of philosophy. Didn't know that, did you? A lot of people didn't know that. You started with philosophy, and then philosophy led to the larger questions: who am I? Why am I here? What is the good? And then philosophy got into metaphysics. Metaphysics being the book after the book of physics. Meta after metaphysics. That. So the philosophy was mostly concerned with the truth and finding the truth, finding what your purpose, what your sole purpose was in life here. As you went along in philosophy, you developed moral philosophy and judicial philosophy. Adam Smith comes along and he's a moral philosopher. He writes the book of jurisprudence. And while he's doing that, he's observing the economic conditions of his time. He ultimately writes The Wealth of Nations. Well, The Wealth of Nations is preceded by the Book of Morality and the Book of Justice, necessary elements to have a functioning economic system. That's why we call it political economy. It embraces the politics of the nation in this case. Economics, on the other hand, is a drier subject, which is mostly concerned with a lot of formulas and rules and formulas, and not as much, let's call it liberal kind of thinking. There is not one formula in the whole Wealth of Nations, which what we got here? We got volume 2 in back. I have volume 1 upstairs. The Inquiry into the Nature and the Cause of the Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith. There is not a formula in this book here. Now, if you go and pick up any, let's go to I just did the, if I'm going to flip the book and show you that, we'll go back to the close-up shot. I got 2 shots here that I can do. I got a close-up shot, and I've got this wide shot. And the wide shot is this sort of bird's eye kind of view. It's a 150-degree lens on this camera that I'm using, which is a Mevo camera, M-E-V-O. I bought this about a year ago. I thought I was going to have this show up and running for about a year ago. No way, Jose, it didn't work out. And it's a year later, and I finally got it, and a lot of money, a lot of emails back and forth to a lot of tech people, not just at Mevo, but there was also an uplink system that went with this. And I'll talk about all that on another day, not today. There was enough on that today. So the political economy leads to where we're at today, and how did we get to where we're at today? And the big influence, the big hammer here, is going to be the Powell Memo of 1971. The Powell Memo of 1970, who became Chief Justice Powell, and he wrote this major letter to the Chamber of Commerce, which I'm sure I have a copy of it here someplace. Here it is. This is the original version. You can actually download the original version of the Powell Memo, and here is a little picture of him. Whoops, there we go. Okay, that's Powell, Justice Powell, and it's titled "An Attack on the American Free Enterprise System." This is a really complicated and interesting story. And if you're not familiar with the Powell Memo, you really are missing out on how we got to where we're at today. It's in the Powell Memo. It's a blueprint for Fox News. Fair and balanced is actually mentioned in the Powell Memo. While I was in graduate school, the Powell Memo was starting to circulate. And in the brief period I was in graduate school, you could see the Powell Memo basically cut the thinkers out and brought the widget counters in. They got rid of the thinkers and they brought in the mathematicians, the widget counters, leading us to Fox News today and the emphasis on destroying the unions, shutting down dissent in the universities, which led to the Reagan era, the tax breaks to the wealthy. So we went from a country that was taxing the corporations at 90% to corporations at 30% today, 25%. Some of them are paying less than 10%. There's some large corporations that are paying less than the cleaning lady down the block here. So there's been a real redistribution of income in America. A lot of the right wing doesn't like to talk about the redistribution of income because they always associate that with the left and with socialism. But the reality is there has been a redistribution of income, and it's gone the opposite way. You've heard of trickle-down economics. Well, all the money trickled up. Anything that was down here, they've got it. So we're going to talk about the Powell Memo extensively and how we got to where we're at with the little Reagan era in between. The next major item that I wanted to talk about is the Organic Twinkie project. So I've been into health food for a long, long, long time. I started out with brown rice sandwiches in 1980, cauldron-style tofu shop, 1981-82, Mama Paul's brown rice tofu sandwiches, a few other products along the way. And in 1997, I started working to invent an organic Twinkie. 18 years, $50,000, 5,000 hours later, I did it. Does not get to market. You can't go buy one, but I did invent the organic Twinkie. And hopefully I'm going to go out tomorrow. I'm going to take the camera. We're going to go outside and we're going to look at some of the paraphernalia that I accumulated in working on the project. So those are the two big items that we're going to talk about. In between that, there's a half a dozen stories that I'd like to tell. And part of the reason I'm doing this right now is to see if I can learn how to tell a story. Now, I'm looking at the camera. You're looking at me. Normally when I tell stories, I talk to people. I can see their eyes, I can see their lips, I can see their facial expressions. I know how they're reacting to what I'm saying. In this case, I don't see any reaction. All I have is my little camera, and it looks like I'm talking to the computer HAL, H-A-L, one letter up from IBM, from the movie 2001, the classic 2001. Bowman is talking to Hal. Open the pod bay doors, Hal. And then he doesn't. So I'm going to deal with Hal over here. And I'm going to bring Hal out. We're going to look at some of this equipment. There's a short version of the Organic Twinkie project. There's a medium-sized version. And there's a long version of the story. The long version of the story will be multiple episodes. And it's only for people who are really interested in digging into the minutia of the hydrocolloidals and other strange things I worked with in trying to invent this product, which we did. So after that, in between that, I have a few stories from growing up as a cocktail lounge kid in a bar in New York City. The bar was taken over by the mob. We were paying the cops and the mob. There's a whole little part of my life over there. The bar was next to the theater where Mary Martin did Peter Pan and other shows. There's a whole interesting stories there. My father, what a trip this guy was. a few stories there. So we got the growing up, and then mom. Yeah, right. The other half of the story, mom. So we have the other, the early part of my life, and then I wound up working for AT&T, and I had 10 years with AT&T, and I leave with a 17-page letter of resignation. I have a really interesting story about that. And I can also explain what happened when AT&T was deregulated and why deregulation led to that massive communication failure in the mid-90s when New York City lost the stock market and all the airports one momentous afternoon. Ooh, the camera just shifted a little bit. Now I'm low battery on something here. So I'm 15 minutes into it. The other couple of stories, we're gonna let it go at the moment here. I'm gonna run out of battery time, so just to wrap it up. If you like what you're seeing, my tech friend told me to tell you to go look at the bottom of the screen and subscribe. Ring a bell. I don't even know what the bell is, and give me a thumbs up. If you don't like it, give me a thumbs down. Or if you respond, that would be nice. That would be nice. Any response will be well. So we're going to leave it right there for the day, and say thank you for listening, and we'll be back tomorrow, maybe with the Twinkie project. Okay.